The News First investigates. I'm Chief Investigator Brendan Keefe, joined by my colleague, investigative reporter Andy Parati. Hi, Andy.
Hey, Brendan.
Today we're talking about stop arm cameras. Those are the cameras on school buses that catch violators and automatically send them tickets without the police department or a school district police department being involved. And there's an effort to reduce the fines, which are currently at $1,000.
Yeah, it's one of the highest in the nation. It used to be $250. We're talking about the civil penalties. It jumped last year to $1,000, and a lot of drivers do not think it's fair.
So the bus would have been going this direction.
Betsy Johnson shows us the spot she was caught on camera passing a school bus last year.
I've never seen a bus stop in this location in the 20 years I've been here.
A few weeks later, the Atlanta resident got a ticket in the mail for $1,000.
And I thought initially it said $100. And then when I looked closer, it said $1,000. And so I was just literally in shock.
But Betsy says the video doesn't capture the whole story. The former traffic engineer says the bus stop location on Peachtree Road in Buckhead is in a blind spot for drivers traveling in the opposite direction. The day of the violation, there was construction in the area and her vehicle was 5 lanes away from the bus. In Georgia, all lanes of traffic have to stop by law. In some states, though, like South Carolina, they don't require drivers to stop on multi-lane roads traveling in the opposite direction.
I think bus safety is important, but I think having been a transportation engineer before, things aren't just black and white. I think we really have to consider both the passengers, the school bus students, and where those are safely located, but we also have to be cognizant of drivers on this street.
Betsy planned to argue the ticket in court, preparing this detailed presentation for the judge,
With the bus being stopped right there.
including pictures, maps, and a history of the construction in the area at the time of the violation. It's too bad you couldn't work at Matlock. But when she got to court, she changed her mind when she realized there was little recourse.
As you are aware, I don't make laws, I just enforce them.
Tarini Gundy is the Atlanta municipal judge. Betsy wanted to hear her side of the story. She says her courtroom is typically packed with drivers.
Because the fine is so steep, everybody generally shows up for court because they want to see if there's anything that they can do to reduce that fine.
The fines for illegally passing a school bus in Georgia jumped in 2024 from $250 to $1,000 after lawmakers passed Addie's Law, named after this 8-year-old girl hit and killed by a driver while trying to board her bus. Since then, Atlanta Public Schools bus camera citation revenue has more than doubled, from $170,000 in 2023 to $415,000 last year. And that doesn't include the percentage the camera companies receive. Georgia's fine is among one of the highest in the country.
I felt like it was too high. I still feel like it's too high.
State Representative Don Parsons wants to reduce the fine, filing proposed legislation this session that would gradually increase the fine. While the school bus camera fines are civil, the state can put a lien on your vehicle if left unpaid. According to the Georgia Department of Revenue, since 2023, at least 354 Georgia drivers could not renew their vehicle registrations due to unpaid school bus camera violations.
$1,000 is a lot of money. $1,000 can be enough that somebody can put food on the table for their children or pay their rent or pay their car payment.
Judge Gundy says she's heard similar complaints in her courtroom.
I know the $1,000 sounds like a lot, but if something was to happen to a child, it wouldn't even come close.
While Betsy never argued her case before the judge, she took a plea deal and paid $500, a fine reduction, but still a lot of money for a violation she doesn't think she deserved.
I was so like, this isn't right.
Andy, what's the status of this legislation in the General Assembly?
So I just ran into him last week and I said, hey, where does this stand? And it did not cross over. It has not passed yet, but he's still fighting for this. He says he wants to try to find a lawmaker that has similar legislation that he can attach this to, which is all legal. A lot of people don't like it when, when lawmakers do this. but he is very adamant that he's still trying this legislative session.
Yeah, what they do is they use a bill that's already passed one of the chambers, and then they sort of insert this bill, sort of, they use the other bill as sort of a carrier, and it's a giant amendment, but the amendment's actually a whole new law. And like you said, it's standard within the General Assembly. This happens all the time. But there's one other method, which is this is a 2-year legislature in Georgia. And so this bill, even though it didn't cross over, it could still survive into next year.
Yeah, and what's interesting about this lawmaker is that the technology that lawmakers are approved to install on these buses, he was the sponsor of that legislation. So he's responsible in a sense of getting the camera violations on, enabled into law, and now he's trying to rein it in.
Well, it's sometimes it's a flip-flop, but sometimes it's also, hey, you know what? I've learned that maybe this isn't a good thing, or your position evolves as you get new data in. Some people might be out there saying, wait a second, my kids take the school bus every day, and great, we want a deterrence, and $1,000 is a huge deterrent to preventing someone from speeding by a school bus and taking out a child. I mean, if it saves one life, is this legislation worth it?
Yeah, I mean, the whole purpose that lawmakers argue about passing something like this, whether it's this or the school zone speed detection cameras, which a lot of people also don't like, is they hope that it changes behavior. I have yet to see data that necessarily shows that it changes behavior. It certainly makes people want to show up in court to fight that fee. And I'll say we actually went to municipal court, Atlanta Municipal Court, which you saw in the piece interviewing the municipal court judge. And what was interesting is that we were supposed to be there on a day where that courtroom is usually flooded, more than 100 plus people, all with the school bus camera violations. And we get there and no one shows up. And even the judge is like, what is happening here? Turns out there was some sort of mix-up with the clerk of court or court administration, and all of the cases had been pushed back. And the judge didn't know it, the bailiff didn't know it, the solicitor's office didn't know it. So the part that we were really hoping to show in the piece is everyone that shows up, because some of them can't afford that $1,000 fine, and instead we showed up to an empty courtroom. But I appreciate the judge in that moment answering a few questions, even though they don't typically like to do that.
I don't know many people who have an extra $1,000 just laying around. And, that becomes the problem. Is fines like this are a regressive tax. If you're taxing a mother of 5, a single mother of 5 who's holding down 3 jobs, $1,000, where's that single mom going to get that money to pay that? And I think that's sort of the argument. But then also, this sort of incentivizes plea deals, doesn't it? Or the judge reducing the fine. If people challenge it, it generally gets reduced now, doesn't it?
Right, and that's what happened in our case. But one of the things that it does impact, though, is if you can't afford it, it impacts your ability to re-register your vehicle, which you saw that number, over 300 people in the past couple of years have not been able to renew their vehicle registrations. Brendan, another part of this is that this is an example of why the Institute for Justice has identified Georgia as the worst state in the country when it comes to taxation through citation. And we've done a whole series on this. And I think it just is another thing of why drivers just can't stand this practice, because they feel like they're being nickeled and dimed. A lot of them want to take responsibility, but their behavior isn't changing. And I have yet to see data that shows clearly that if you find a community just so much that it's going to be safer than another.
So in other words, it's about revenue, not about reduction.
That's what a lot of people think.
Yeah, and that's been the point of your series for some time. Andy Parati, investigative reporter with Atlanta News First Investigates. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Chief Investigator Brendan Keefe. You can see all of Andy's investigations at atlantanewsfirst.com or on our Atlanta News First app. You can also listen to Behind the Investigation as a podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you next time.